Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Manchester City's transfer market shenanigans, the Pep Guardiola edition. Remember when Pep called Nico González Mini-Rodri? That wasn't just a nickname, it was a prophecy. A bold declaration that City's midfield needed fixing. And after splurging on every other position, it was time to address the center of the park. But this isn't the first time Pep and City have sought the next great Spanish defensive midfielder. Oh no, my friends, this is a saga. A story so familiar that City fans are experiencing déjà vu. But is Nico the real heir to Rodri's throne, or are we about to witness another false Messiah's moment? Let's find out. 1. The La Masia connection. More than just a famous last name. Before you assume Nico González is just another random Spanish midfielder, let's talk heritage. This man isn't here because of his last name. He's not the LeBron Bronny James situation of football. His father, Fran González, was a Deportivo La Coruña legend, winning La Liga, Copa del Rey, and basically being an absolute baller before Twitter was even a thing. But unlike certain footballing nepo babies who shall not be named, Nico proved early on that he wasn't in La Masia because of daddy's trophies. The kid had skills. He was La Masia certified, meaning he had more football IQ before turning 18 than some midfielders develop in their entire careers. His ability to read the game? Chef's kiss. His technical ability? Smooth as Pep's bald head on a Champions League night. And let's not forget, La Masia doesn't just hand out golden tickets, you have to earn your place. This is the same academy that produced Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets. If you're there, it's because you've got something special. Nico wasn't just another promising prospect, he was one of the best talents in his age group. Scouts across Europe had his name circled, underlined, and highlighted in their notebooks. Even at a young age, he was already being linked to top European clubs. There were rumors that Manchester City had made an offer before he even turned 18. But Nico stayed put, believing he was destined to be Busquets' heir. Turns out he was only half right. He was going to be the heir to a legendary Spanish defensive midfielder, just not at Barcelona. Nico wasn't just playing the game, he was playing 4D chess while others were struggling with checkers. Imagine being so good that European clubs were monitoring you as a teenager. Meanwhile, at 17, most of us were still trying to figure out how to talk to our crush without sounding like a malfunctioning robot. City has been scouting Nico for years. This is like waiting in line for the perfect concert ticket, and finally getting it, only to realize the concert might not even be that good. La Masia is basically Harvard for footballers, except the tuition is getting yelled at by Xavi's ghost every time you misplace a pass. Being a La Masia graduate gets you automatic respect. It's like walking into a job interview and casually mentioning you interned for Elon Musk. Barcelona had Nico in their academy and still went out and bought Oriol Romeu to replace Busquets. That's like throwing away a winning lottery ticket and then asking for spare change. 2. The Busquets-Rodri-Nico triangle of destiny. Here's where things get interesting. Back in Barcelona, Nico was hyped up as the heir to Sergio Busquets. But, plot twist, his game was actually nothing like Busquets. You see, people just assume all Spanish defensive midfielders are carbon copies of each other. But Busquets was a controller. Rodri is a mix of control and physicality. And Nico is, well, a little bit of everything. Barcelona didn't know what to do with him. First-team minutes were scarce. Barcelona coach basically looked at Nico and said, "Not quite my tempo." So, off to Valencia he went, hoping to prove himself. And what did Valencia do? They completely imploded like a telenovela, changing managers mid-season, battling relegation and giving Nico zero stability. Oh, and to make things worse, he got injured for 2 months. Classic. But here's the real kicker. Barcelona needed a Busquets replacement. It was their biggest priority. Instead of grooming Nico into the role, they took one look at him and went, "Nah, let's sign Oriol Romeu instead." Yes, you heard that right. Barca chose a 32-year-old backup option over a homegrown talent with years ahead of him. This is the same club that let Dani Alves leave for free and then tried to bring him back in his late 30s. Legendary decision-making. Meanwhile, over at Manchester City, Pep saw the situation and started rubbing his hands like a cartoon villain. He knew exactly what was happening. Another La Masia-trained talent was slipping through Barcelona's fingers, and if there's one thing Pep loves, it's turning La Masia outcasts into world-class players. Just ask Thiago Alcantara, Eric Garcia. Okay, maybe not Eric Garcia, but you get the point. Nico's time at Valencia was like being in a group project where everyone else forgot to do their part. Barcelona's midfield strategy is like a confused dad at a grocery store, just wandering around, picking things up, putting them back, and ultimately walking out with the wrong item. Valencia at the time was less of a football club and more of a psychological endurance test. Barca's plan for replacing Busquets was like replacing your broken iPhone with a Nokia 3310. Sure, it works, but it's definitely not the upgrade you were looking for. 3. The Porto redemption arc. After Barcelona gave him the "it's not you, it's us" treatment, Nico packed his bags for Porto. Now here's where things get spicy. Porto's manager Sergio Conceição put Nico through a footballing boot camp, and suddenly the kid leveled up. He became a midfield enforcer, combining his technical skills with a newfound aggression. City didn't need a lot of convincing after that. Opta stats went crazy. Nico led Porto in possession regains, tackles and aerial duels contested. Translation? He was winning balls, bossing midfield battles, and doing all the dirty work that City desperately needed. Nico's Porto stats were so good that Pep probably started salivating like a kid in a candy store. Porto took a silky La Masia graduate and turned him into a defensive monster. It's like sending a rich kid to military school and getting back an elite soldier. 4. The Manchester City test, Mini-Rodri, or Pep's latest experiment. Fast forward to his City debut against Newcastle. Nico drops a masterclass. 103 passes attempted, 100 completed, 15 into the final third. Not just a sideways pass merchant, mind you, actual useful forward passes. He was calm, composed, and bossing the midfield like he'd been there for years. Meanwhile, City's midfield before Nico, a horror show. Rodri got injured, and suddenly the midfield turned into a clown fiesta. Rico Lewis, Bernardo Silva, Mateo Kovacic, it was chaos. They were getting bullied, leaving gaps big enough for Haaland to sprint through. Enter Nico, and suddenly, City looks functional again. Before Nico, City's midfield had the defensive presence of a wet paper towel. Watching City play without Rodri was like watching a three-legged table, unstable and doomed to collapse. City fans still have PTSD from that Liverpool game, where the midfield basically disappeared like Houdini. Rodri missing a game is like taking the cheese out of a pizza. It technically still exists, but it's just not the same. Watching Kovacic try to play as a defensive midfielder was like watching a cat try to swim. Brave effort, but absolutely not his natural habitat. 5. Can Nico be even better than Rodri? Now here's a wild thought. Could Nico actually surpass Rodri? Because while Rodri had to learn positional discipline under Pep, Nico has been marinating in La Masia philosophy since birth. He's got leadership qualities, footballing IQ, and the ability to dictate play while shrugging off defenders like they're minor inconveniences. Oh, and did I mention he's already barking orders at John Stones and Joško Gvardiol? The man has been at City for 5 minutes and is already acting like a general. Some guys have to earn the respect of the locker room. Nico just walked in and started giving instructions like he's been there for 5 seasons. Nico directing traffic in the City midfield is like a substitute teacher walking in and immediately taking control of a rowdy classroom. If leadership was a stat in FIFA, Nico's rating would be 99 already. Rodri walked so Nico could run, but what if Nico starts sprinting? Pep's scouting reports probably just said La Masia trained, can pass, looks confident, buy immediately. The way Nico plays, you'd think he was a veteran from Spain's golden generation, not a kid who was still getting loaned out a year ago. 6. The future of City's midfield. Nico and Rodri, the ultimate duo. Here's the real kicker. City didn't just buy Nico as a backup. The long-term vision? Rodri and Nico playing together in a double pivot. Imagine 2 midfielders, both capable of shielding the defense, breaking lines with passing, and bossing the game physically. If this works, City's midfield dominance is going to be outright illegal. And let's be honest, Pep loves a tactical experiment. If there's even a chance of Rodri and Nico functioning together, you better believe we're going to see it in action. Whether it turns into a masterpiece or another case of Pep overthinking in the Champions Leagues remains to be seen. Nico and Rodri together is like having 2 bouncers guarding the midfield. No one sips getting past. If this duo clicks, the Premier League might need to introduce midfield restrictions like financial fair play. Closing thoughts. The future of Manchester City's midfield. So, is Nico González the future of City's midfield? Will he and Rodri form a legendary duo, or is this just Pep's latest science experiment? Let me know in the comments. And remember, if you ever feel unappreciated, just know that Barcelona had Nico all along and decided to replace Busquets with Oriol Romeu. See you next time.